Another fabulous edition of the Finance and Operations Committee. Others will join as they can, I am sure. The first items on the agenda are the information-only items. I did not have any questions about those.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
just want to make one clarification.
Okay.
The
Please.
contract, there are no errors on the contract itself, but our internal team did discover on page 2 of the memo that we inadvertently stated Lincoln Bassett instead of Obama. And we also inadvertently stated on the memo 30 sessions instead of 48. That is not a correction that's needed on the actual contract, but it is a small correction that's needed on the memorandum.
And which item was this again? It was
This was 2.2.
2.2. Okay.
Correct.
And does that change the funding amount?
It does not.
Okay. All right. And so that can be corrected
Administratively, yes.
in the information posted here so that the correct information is listed here. And
Correct.
that's what is listed for the board agenda for next week is the information only items.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you for those clarifications and corrections.
Thank you.
We'll move into abstracts. The first one is 3.1, a community canvas. So, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, thanks. So good evening, everybody. This is just a small grant that was written to the Connecticut Office of the Arts to support a project. That's one of the initial projects of our new Arts Public Service Academy, creating picnic tables to go into our courtyard. Part of the funding is to take a field trip to go and see examples of arts and public works up at a museum in Winsted, Connecticut, and the rest are for materials for the project.
All right. I'll just say that American Mural project is pretty fascinating, having visited that a couple times over the years. So
yeah, they're excited to go.
yeah, well, that sounds great. So I have no other questions on that. So thank you for applying for those funds. Hope it's a great trip. 3.2 is Title I Consolidated Grant. Ms. Bonanno.
Yes, so this year's Title I award is 13,400,000 and some change. That award is split up between the public schools portion and the private parochial school portion. So our portion of the grant is about 13,294,000. This year, we will spend just about 10 million of that money on staff and benefits. The remaining funds will be dedicated to programming within the 24 Title I schools, inclusive of summer programming, after-school programming, McKinney-Vento supports for students in the district, Head Start programming, school-level field trips, and parent activities.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions on this? The only question I have is this a similar amount or the same amount that you all were expecting for this?
No, so this is up $1.5 million from last year.
You said it's up 1.5? Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
So last year it was just around 11.8. This year we're at 13.3 for our portion, 13.462 for the total grant.
Okay, I know there's general interest in understanding if there's any changes or differences, positive or negative, with funds that originate with the federal government. So thanks for that update.
No problem.
That's the only question I had. Hearing nothing else, 3.3 is Title III English Language Acquisition Grant. So, yes, Ms.
Yes. This is hi. Good afternoon, and I am covering for Dr. Evelyn Robles, our ML director. And this grant actually provides the following: improve academic achievement for MLs, English proficiency for our Connecticut English learners, increase the foreign years cohort graduation rates for all students. It also provides effective language instruction programs to meet the needs of MLs, and also provides professional development to classroom teachers, administrative, so we can build capacity within the district. And also we use it to promote family engagement opportunities, as well as having tutors across the district. We have a total of over 4,000 MLs in the district to ensure they are improving academically and doing the best, so that we can meet standards in our district.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? The only question I have, is this similar to what you all were expecting it to be? So I mean, this is, I think, state funding, but I don't know if it originates with the feds.
Yeah, so this one, yeah, it's the amount we were expecting it to be, luckily.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hearing and seeing no other questions on that, we'll move on to amendments. The first, there's one with Children's Community Program. Ms. Jackson?
Yep, this is a change, not in a dollar amount. It's just that the program, the dollar amount is the same as a change from the calendar, where if you look at how we're dividing the actual daily rate, we did it initially over 182 instead of 180 days, as is the program. So that's just a change, but there's no change in the dollar amount.
Okay, comments or questions? My only question is, if there's a reduction of days, why not a change in the dollar amount? It's the only
The
question.
dollar amount was the agreed upon dollar amount. It's just that we put 182 instead of 180 to start.
Okay, so it was the overall dollar amount, and then it just kind of
Divide over
okay.
time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hearing nothing else on that, we'll jump into the one purchase order with Sign Pro Incorporated. Mr.
Yes, sir.
True?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. So, it's a sign for $55,572.27. And it really covers the cost for the sign design, setup, installation, and fees. And how it relates to our strategic operating plan is the modernization of technology and systems. It's replacing a very aged infrastructure. Operational efficiencies. It also is a real-time information provided for our students and our school community. So it's a much-needed technology upgrade that runs through our MSAP grant, which then coincides of attracting and retaining our wonderful students at Career High School.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? My only question was, is this going to be attached to the building itself, or is it going to kind of be out towards the sidewalk? Or
No, so it's going to be out in the front of the school, kind of towards the sidewalk. There are different phases of this. Currently working through the plan. Next step is working through city officials for appropriate permits and things of that nature, adhering to all the specifications from the city. But it will not be attached to the building. It'll be kind of out in the front of the building, so that it's visible, and so it can be utilized. And we think it's something that's much needed, and certainly those upgrades are a positive.
all right, thank you. And I noticed that the documentation shows that this will include the installation of the design and installation, manufacture, et cetera. So
Yes,
okay.
sir. Mhm.
So those are my questions.
Mhm.
All right. Seeing nothing else on this, we now thank you for your time here. And now we have 4 related resolutions on finalizing building projects. So either Dr. White, Dr. Negron, who's the lead on this? It's not listed.
These are resolutions for us to have close out building projects, so that, again, it'll go through F&O. It'll also go through stewardship and then to the board to vote on it. This will allow us to complete what's necessary so that there is reimbursements and it impacts the debt service the city's paying for these projects, paid for these projects, and still paying on them.
Okay, a quick question I have, and before I open it up for other questions, is can someone remind me what we had posted? Because we had a series of these previous in the fiscal year, I think, or several months ago. Are we expecting
Yes.
that there's going to be documentation posted after the citywide special meeting, which is being scheduled for this coming Thursday?
Yes, I'll make sure there's more documentation posted. But it's the complete, it's completion of the form, and then all of the backup that's been done, researching making sure everything was done so that we have all of our eligible costs in there, and it is a large package, but I'll make sure we get those posted.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think they would just definitely post it for the citywide meeting, but then also, or unless it's being presented and then immediately when it can after, but for the full board meeting. I know people will want to have something like a memo or something that kind of explains this depending on what these things look like. I'm trying to remember what we had last time, which was sufficient for everybody, so I would follow the same model.
I'll go back and look.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on these? Okay. So understanding that there'll be a memo or something providing the more documentation, similar to what we had for the last group that went through for these 4 items. So understanding that that'll happen. And wow, we've already gone through the action items. So I'll go ahead and make the main motion. I move we send to the full board these 3 abstracts, this 1 amendment, this 1 purchase order, and these 4 resolutions.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Downer, Ms. Downer.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thanks.
And I'm a yes as well, so the motion carries. So we will now move into the reports discussion section, first of which is the FY 26-27 draft budget. Mr.
Right.
Hernandez?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I will do, I will share a PowerPoint presentation that we'll use as the basis of this conversation. So allow me to share this right here. Okay. Let me make a presentation. Do you see it as a presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So this is the draft budget, and I want to make sure that I want to emphasize on the word draft, as these numbers will definitely um, these numbers will change, as the weeks go by and we continue not only to have conversations with the community. As you know, we have already done 3 of our community budget forums, and we have 3 more to go for this week. And then even in between that, we also having still conversation with some departments. We're still having other negotiations with some of the other bargaining units. So there are still some more information that's coming down the pipeline, and we will incorporate as much as we can based on the timeline that we have to submit this budget. So, but this is a good draft budget. That's a good starting point for the conversation that I like to have not only with this committee but also with the board next week and with the rest of the community. As always, we start with the SOP, which is our foundational piece for us to do our work. We're focusing on the operational efficiencies. Strategy number 2, which is to advocate and align resources to achieve equity across the schools and programs. Everything that we do, every decision has to be filtered through this strategy, make sure that we are achieving that goal. I want to quickly just kind of like remind not only this committee but also the public about our budget development timeline. We are on this We are in between the January and early February stages, right? Where we are still engaging community, but we are also now presenting a draft to FNO, and then next week we'll be doing the same thing with the entire Board of Education. But then even after that, there are revisions and adjustments that will be made, and then we'll continue to do so until we have to, you know, present it to the Board of Elders and then ultimately the Board of Education for adoption. So this will continue evolving, but this is a good start for questions and potentially, you know, some ideas, and I'm always open to listen to ideas and what the community has to say so we can do this in the most effective way. The approach has been guided by this central goal of, you know, to create my apologies, to create transparency, transparent process informed by diverse stakeholders' perspectives to ultimately achieve equity across all of our schools. And I'll speak a little bit about the equity in a little bit when I get to the budget portion of it. Some of these things I'll go quickly because after this slide is where we're going to focus most of the conversation, which is on numbers. But I quickly wanted to kind of remind the public of some of the equity updates that we've achieved or done throughout this year. The realignment of Title I grant, realignment of Perkins funding to expand CTE offerings across and Hill House, the redesign of the in-house suspension worker to now be a student success specialist. It's a whole new job description, a whole new role. So one is basically substituting replacing the other. Realignment of TESOL support for to serve schools, for the multilingual learners, and the centralized registration for early childhood to expand access and parental choice for across pre-K programs. And then most recently, and it will be seen on the budget for this coming year, is the introduction of the funding weight for multilingual learners and special education students. I want to take just a quick 30 seconds on this one. And to the committee, it's very important that we kind of take a pause on this one and think about what we've been asking the state to do. One of our advocacy pieces to the state is for them to consider including a weight on the ECS, the education cost sharing formula, to include a weight for special education students and multilingual learners. The ECS does have a weight only for the income and some other factors, but not for special education students and multilingual learners, students, which in itself has an additional cost because of the resources that it requires to provide quality education to this population. So it is important for us to show that we're willing to do it ourselves, in addition to ask them to also do it on their end. So what I'm telling the state is, like, we're willing to do it with the limited resources that we have. We're willing to put a weight because we understand the needs of our students, and we would like for our students to have as many resources as possible. And this is just a way to not only provide equity across all of our students and classrooms, but also to demonstrate that we're willing to do what we're asking them to do as well. So I want to stress that point. Now let's get to the numbers. You've seen this slide before, and my apologies. I'm trying to play with the screen here so I can see. There you go. You've seen this slide before. These are the last 10 years, the request of the budget, the approved budget, the difference, and the actual end of year results. The reason that I wanted to show this before I actually show you what the draft budget looks like, it's because the history matters. And in this case, history matters quite a bit. I would like for you to focus on FY24, FY25, and FY26, at least the last 3 fiscal years. If you look at that first column, that's the request. The request means this is what the school district is saying that we need for general funds. Again, let me be very, very, very clear. This is general funds only. This is not the entire budget for the school district. This does not include special funds, does not include inter-district funds. This is just general funds. The school district said in 2024, we need $207 million to make this work. The school district only received $203 million. The approved budget for the general funds is made out of two components, the ECS, which is the education cost sharing that comes from the state, and the local contribution, which is the one that the mayor and the board of alders approve funding from the city. Those two numbers combined makes the approved budget for general fund. Going back to the ECS, and I want to make this side note, the education cost sharing. Right now, the education cost sharing is about $142 million, 142,500,000. Something like that, 142.5. That number has not changed for many, many years. That number is made out of a foundational amount, which is $11,525 per student. That number has not changed since 2013. So now, 13 years later, 2026, the state continues to give only $11,525 per student under the ECS formula. In 2013, the cost of living was whatever it was at that point. We can all agree that in 2026, the cost is much greater than it was in 2013. What cost $1 in 2013 probably costs now $2 or $3 in 2026. And the same applies to anything, any expense that you compare 2013 to 2026. The formula has not been adjusted for inflation, has not been adjusted based on the actual expenses that we are reporting to the state. So the gap of revenue and expenses continues to widen, continues to get bigger as we continue to provide a living wage for our staff, as we continue to provide the best quality education we can provide to our students. The revenue from the state has not been able to keep up with the pace of the costs and expenses. So 2024, we asked for 207. We got 203. So we started the year with a $3.8 million deficit in the budget. We ended up the year with a $709,000 deficit. 2025, the request increased by about $13 million, $220 million. We got 208. So we started the year with $11.8 million deficit just before the first day of school, $11.8 million deficit in the budget. We ended up the year with almost just under $5 million deficit. 2026, this is just as I was arriving to the district. We requested $231 million. We got approved 213, so we started the year with an $18.2 million deficit. And if you remember that $18.2 million deficit, which originally was 23.2, but then it came down to 18.2 as the mayor $5 million increase to his budget was approved by the Board of Alders. Then it decreased to 18.2, and then we had to start implementing mitigations. We have to provide to you a mitigation plan of how we were going to cut down that $18.2 million, and we provided you with a whole bunch of different cost cut measures that included, closure of a school, a merger of schools, right sizing. It included a list of a whole bunch of different, strategies that we were going to implement throughout the year in order to mitigate that. After we received the numbers through December, the actual numbers through December, as I presented on the last FNO meeting, I did mention that the projections were looking that we were going to spend, instead of the 213, we were probably going to spend 222. So we're going to be somewhere between $8 to $9 million deficit, based on how the expenses were through December. Now, that doesn't mean that that's where we're going to end, because now we have some months now for us to keep working and see how we can cut that deficit. But that's the projection through December. So what we did for this year in order to build the budget is that what I asked the team was, let's be realistic. I do not want the budget to look pretty, to look good. I need the budget to look what it's supposed to look. I want to know the truth. I want to know how much it costs to educate our children from the general funds. And the public needs to know what it is. So I imagine in my head, I said, well, if we ask for 207, then we ask for 220, then we ask for 231, the increases have been in double digits, $30 million, then we increase by $11 million the next year. Because every year, teachers get raises, staff get raises, and then the transportation cost continues to go up, tuition cost continues to go up. I said, well, maybe it's going to be somewhere in the total $242 million. That was just me in a very high level. Then we started to account for all the cost measures that we implemented. Uh, all of those cuts were not one-time cuts. No, they were not one-time cuts. These cuts that we made this year, they actually carry over to future years. So when we started measuring or counting how much we cut in expenses, but then we started accounting for the increase of cost for next year, as you know, teachers are receiving at about 4.3% wage increase for next year. Then you have administrators, then you have other bargaining units that are receiving raises as well. Transportation, it seems like it's going to go up by about $6-7 million compared to this year. So between one thing and the other, the net effect of the cuts that we did and the increase of cost for next year is about $1 million. So ultimately, what we're asking for is not going to be 231, it's going to be about $232 million. So before I go to the next slide, what I wanted to say with this slide in front of you is that the trend of increasing by double digits, we were able to put a little bit of a mandate and hold it off a little bit by combining the cuts and the mitigation strategies that we implemented this year with the increase of cost for next year. The net effect came out to be an additional $1 million. And that, again, that's the request. But because we only account for $230 million, and that's what we are assuming that we're going to get next year, then there's still a huge gap. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and you can see it clearly now. On the first column, you see the approved budget. This is a line item, a high-level line item budget. On the first column, you see the approved budget for this year, which is $230 million. For next year, the second column, that's kind of like in a grayish, highlighted in grayish, in gray, without adjustment, I'll explain what that means. The district needs $252 million of general funds. So in a perfect scenario, if I have $252 million, not only I can do everything that we're doing, but now it releases some of the special funds to now do innovation, to add programming, to increase and improve the quality of service. What happens is that with the inability to increase our funding from the general fund to the level that we need to, we have to use some of those special funds based on what they are allowed to be used for and based on the parameters that they come to the district. We then have to use some of those special funds to then be able to pay for some of these line items based on what the grant for those special funds was written for. So once we start applying those revenues, those special funds, we're able to cut that down by about $20 million. So now we move to column number 3. Column number 3 is 232. So again, what we need is 252, but we are already identifying some other special funds, which is outside of the general fund, to use about $20 million of it. And now we're saying for the general fund, if you give me $232 million, I can maintain status quo. By maintaining status quo, I mean that everything that we have right now will stay the same. Staffing levels, we wouldn't have to think about any type of right sizing because according to what we've heard already, there is no more right sizing to do. I mean, we've done everything we can. We won't have to decrease any of our agreements. We will be able to just continue doing status quo and everything will stay the same with $232 million. Now, disadvantages. Well, disadvantages is that if we only get $232 million, we keep everything the way it is, no cuts, we can function the same way that we function this year. The disadvantage is that then we had to commit $20 million of special funds in order to make this happen. And in a perfect world, what we would love to do is to maintain those special funds so we could innovate, so we could create more programming, so we could increase and improve the quality of service, so we can do the many things that we've caught in the past that we would love to bring back, or new things that the district would like to do, for our students. So 232 is the least that we need in order to maintain status quo. Which brings us to where are we now then? So if we only have $230 million, because that's that much we know we're gonna get, We're asking for 232. We have almost an $18.9 million deficit to start the budget conversation. What we're asking for, from $230 million to $232 million, we're asking for an 8.9% increase to our approved budget. If we can get 252, the conversation will be totally different. Not only will be able to maintain what we have, but now we'll be able to add more programming and improve the quality of service. But realistically, we're asking for 232. We only have 213. That's the ask. As you can see from previous years, we asked for 231 last year, we only got 213. We asked for 207 the year before, we only got 203. So there's always, the revenue that we receive is always short of what we need. We hope that this year will be the difference. And we ask, obviously, the state and any other stakeholders, to help us achieve that goal. I'll leave it as this because I already kind of like a long presentation, but I really want to leave some space for questions, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. As I know I presented so many numbers and I know that there may be some questions. I know that the board members, you received a more detailed level spreadsheet that speaks to a more detailed line item budget that represents these numbers. So you've had, maybe if you have some time today, you had a few hours to look at it. And if not, then you have some time throughout the week, and I'm always open for questions either now or later.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, and also thank you for everyone's work on this, for the finance team's work, Mr. Hernandez, your work on this. I guess there are two parts. I think one topic of conversation is about strategy, and I don't necessarily know where to have that topic of conversation in terms of what the request should be. I mean, status quo is status quo. I don't know. I don't necessarily intend for us to ask for a status quo budget because there are many improvements that the learning community can benefit from having. So I'm curious about just the thought around asking for a status quo budget of the 232 versus the actual costs that we need to run the district. And in a future conversation, I would be interested in the anticipated elevated cost of transportation and how that can be reduced. Our transportation costs need to be reined in, and we should start that process now. I know it's already been started, and I know that the team has been looking at routes and just seeing what some possibilities are. I think we should continue that work and see how the costs cannot balloon and we can avoid that in a particular way. Those are just my initial kind of reactions and responses from the presentation. And I'll also will continue to digest what's been presented and think more and have more conversation with all of you.
So Dr. Yarborough, let me at least add a little bit more to your first statement on the
Please.
asking for 232 as opposed to 252. So we have the city in conjunction with the leadership of BOE. We have been we are engaged in conversations with our state delegation. We have several meetings already. In fact, one just as recent as a few weeks ago, and we will continue to have those meetings with the state delegation where this conversation basically has like two phases, right? The one is this is how much you really need if you want to see more programming and more quality service and improve the services we already have that we know are working, but they will work even better if we have more resources so we can then provide our students with the best of the best. But they also receive the information of, in lieu of not being able to receive that level of funding, this is the minimum that we could receive in order for us to at least stay status quo. I think that the reason that I have those two columns in the middle is because I want to tell both stories. This is how much we really need. But at minimum, I need to get to 32. The reality is that we have yet to see any movement from any of the stakeholders that could give us an indication that we will receive even the minimum amount requested. If in lieu of that, we have to start planning accordingly. I don't want to wait until June to then try to come up with mitigation strategies. We are having those conversations already. And I like I don't say that lightly because all the cuts that we made for this year, although I'm proud of the fact that we make cuts that are sustainable now in the sense that now they are also helping us at least mitigate the deficit for next year, they were very painful cuts. These were cuts that nobody wanted to make. These are cuts that if we can turn the clock back and have more resources, they would have never happened. So these were very painful decisions that the district had to make. And and for me now to say, listen, we made those cuts, we're maintaining those cuts because we don't have enough resources to bring them back. And now start the conversation by saying, and even after that, I still have an $18.8 million deficit to start the conversation for next year's budget. It's extremely painful and difficult. So 232 will definitely keep us the way we are. 252 will take us to the next level. So I tell both sides of the story, and because I want to be as transparent as possible. That has been the core of our conversation, to be transparent at the same time that we're building equity, which we did with the implementation of the additional support for schools with the special ed education and the multilingual learners weight on the general fund. But I have to be very transparent, and I think that's the driver
Yes,
for us to get this far.
yes. Just to offer a response, kind of thinking out loud, um, we want an ideal school system, and we want to invest the resources that allow us to provide an ideal education to New Haven Public Schools students and members of the school district. Um, and it sounds like the status quo budget is less than ideal for what we want. I do agree with maintaining um, a slim uh, budget that does not have bloat, and one where we can maintain the cuts, the adjustments, because perhaps they allowed us to increase our efficiencies. Um, we realized we could do without a particular set of items. Then yes, keep those butts. But I don't to request to say that we're going to say that we need 252 and we're going to ask for 232, unless somebody is looking to be a hero for the New Haven Public School District. So maybe if the state is looking to be a hero, the city is looking to be a hero, then maybe they'll jump in and say, I'm going to exceed the 232 by allocating money. I think we need to ask for what we need and ask for what would be ideal for the students. Allow other people to say no, not for us to cut ourselves down and say, we're going to ask for what we think we can get. I think we need to ask for what is ideal and what our students in the district deserve. And so maybe you're actually saying the same thing, and maybe we're all on the same page. And I, in general, do not support status quo if it's not giving us the ideal education district that we need. If it is giving us the ideal education district that we need, then we can move forward with it. And I'm in full support of it. So I'll keep thinking about it and being in conversation with you and the district on this.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
great
That's
feedback.
all.
Great feedback, and I agree with you. And we're on the same page, and that's why both numbers are there, because I understand the benefit of having both numbers in front of you. But I agree. So thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Downer.
Thank you, Chief Hernandez. I just have a couple of questions. I'm looking at your spreadsheet, and I guess I got a couple questions. I really do, because I'm not sure where our custodians from the vendor are on your spreadsheet, the breakdown of it. I see that you have part-time person, seasonal. I don't know what happened to the spreadsheet. What happened to the spreadsheet?
Well, the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint presentation?
Can you just put the PowerPoint presentation back
Okay,
up?
yes. I was looking for the spreadsheet, thinking that that's what you were referring to. Give me 1 second. Let me share it back. All right, yeah. Okay, there it is.
So my first question is, how do you categorize ABM? How do you categorize our vendors that are here for custodial? Where do you categorize them? Are they part-time?
No, in the case specifically of ABM, they will be under the all other contractual services.
So which is under the 16,736?
Correct.
So, okay, so whatever services they're charging is under this. All right, so hold on for a second. Hold that right there. Because your part-time seasonal is different on your spreadsheet here than what's on that Excel spreadsheet. You had 4.9.
Yeah, so if you click on some of those numbers, I only have one screen right now, so I cannot have the other one. But if you click on some of those numbers, you could see some formulas that subtract other because they are in different line items. So there's a little bit of additional subtraction to get to that number. But the formulas are there, so you can kind of like follow through. And I can definitely, have a conversation with you to show you exactly how they work out, as I
So,
need to also look at it as well myself.
okay, so that's fine. You could click off, but the 16,736,000 here
Yeah.
is sitting here. That's part-time privatization that's coming in here. I also see that there's an escalation coming in on the maintenance. And I also see, are you anticipating that we're going to need an extra million on substitutes for 2027? I mean, what is driving that?
Yeah, I think in the previous FNO, I talked a little bit about the increase of substitute teaching needs that have happened throughout the district. I think I also spoke about the level of absences by our teachers. At least in the month of December, it was quite a bit, but it's been also the case throughout the year. So there's been an increase of absences, by our teachers throughout the district, which has triggered, more usage of substitute teaching, throughout the district. So this additional $1 million is in preparation of the reality that we're living. I mean, I wish I didn't have to do it. I'm just trying to meet the reality of where we are. And right now we have, if you look at the numbers through December, if I'm not mistaken, we are already showing that we will have a deficit on that line of substitute teaching by $1.7 million at the end of the year. So in order to meet, in order for me to really make a budget that fits the reality, at least we needed to add another $1 million. And then that other $700,000 that we're projecting, it's gonna have to be mitigated by some other, implementing some strategies. Perhaps, reducing some of the, substitute teachers that are already in schools by default. And there are some conversations we're having about how to reduce the substitute teaching expense. So instead of adding 1.7, which is what this year is looking like we have to add to our budget, I'm only adding $1 million, and at least kind of meet the need halfway there, because we plan to, implement other strategies to reduce the cost. So that drives the substitute teaching driver is driven by the need of
So
the many instances.
okay, so when I see stuff like that, I see that are we meeting the state requirement to teach our kids? I mean, we don't have a certified teacher in there. We got substitutes in there, and I'm not speaking against, having a substitute, but are we meeting that? There's
I will have to defer that question to
so
one of our
maybe Dr.
academics.
Negron or somebody can answer that. I mean, when I see an extra additional million coming in there, I want to question, are we meeting the guideline to have a certified teacher in the classroom the hours that we're supposed to meet for teaching our children? Are we meeting that? I mean, extra million to just put it. I'm gonna go back also, Chief Hernandez, on this 16 million because I'm over the privatization. I'm so over it. It's not even funny because we're going into a $39 million deficit just from 2026 to 2027. That's absurd. That doesn't even make any sense right now to me, especially as a property, not even just as a board member.
Okay, I'll let Dr. Negron speak to the other piece since she's ready to speak about that. But I will say that other contractor is not just ABM. There's all the other contracts are there. So it's not just ABM. So, but I'll let Dr. Negron, speak to the other component.
So, good afternoon, Board Member Downer. As it relates to the substitute teaching line, as CFO Hernandez mentioned, is that we have seen a rise in terms of absences, not just our teachers, but as it relates to our staff. So to meet obligation, every time a teacher is out, we have to do our best to ensure that that classroom is covered. And sometimes it means having to hire a substitute teacher to come in to cover the classroom or be assigned to the school. But overall, we are seeing an increase. That is why that line continues to go up. But again, because we have to ensure that we have the supervision and the coverage in every classroom. So when you say, are we meeting the obligation? I would say we are meeting it because we're not going to leave a classroom open. And that's why we have to continue to pull in those substitute teachers to support the work in the schools.
Okay, so all your substitute teachers are certified teachers to teach our students?
Substitute teachers that go into the classroom have the clearance in terms of what's mandated as to the requirements that they need to have to ensure they go into a classroom. When you are talking about a long-term absence, those requirements are more different, meaning that you are looking for backgrounds in those areas where people are certified in. So there are different requirements in terms of the length that a person is going to be substituting in a classroom.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So the other thing is you're requesting 15 million just for other contractual services, 15 million straight across for the next 3 years. I mean, are we not looking at bringing scaling this this privatization back on the custodial? I don't understand what this is. We're still paying these folks medical. We're still paying, everything for these folks, their salary. The company is not paying anything.
Well, Ms. Anna, I would like to bring you back to what it's including that line item.
Hey, hold on. 1 second. I'll let you talk. But the bottom line is I've been sitting on this board for 2 years and it's been the same thing. Of course, hoping that it's going to change. It's getting worse. The grants are getting far and few. We have to do something. We cannot continue to sit up here and do the same thing. And this is not going to stick well that we're asking for an additional 39 million from 26 to 27, 2026 year to 2027. It's not going to be well. So, I mean, I don't know where this money is coming from. We got 2 more years with this administration. But we're doing the same thing, expecting different results. And I'm sorry, I can't support this. I really can't. It's the same stuff.
Yeah.
Just an additional $1 million here, additional 2 million here. I just can't do it. And I'm just gonna be real. We cannot continue to do the same thing and expect different results.
So let me answer all the contractual services area, and then I'll also address just a little bit from a very very high level.
Dr. Negron, did you want to respond first or no?
Yes, thank you for acknowledging my hand up. I think what is important to know, and I agree with Ms. Downer as it relates to the other contractual services. And I know that soon Dr. White will be presenting the analysis that he has done that takes a look at what would be the cost of the status quo versus if we move in a complete different direction. So that is coming. That's another separate conversation just that relates to the privatization that you speak about, Ms. Downer. But what I do want to lift here, that I want to lift, that when we look at the budget as a whole, if we're looking at the budget as a whole, whether we're talking privatization or not, the gap that we have is real. So even if we talk about, okay, do away with the privatization, bring in-house, that in-house maybe, and I don't want to speak numbers because I know Dr. White is doing the analysis, that in-house may be more than what it currently costs. Who knows, maybe it's the same, maybe it's low, but the reality is that I don't believe that's going to offset. I don't believe that will offset the 18.8 that we're talking about. And if we go to the 252, to Dr. Yarborough's point earlier, that's even higher. I don't know that that particular line item begins to tackle the overall picture. So just want to make sure that we're not getting lost in one line item, because the gap overall is the fact that we don't have what we need to continue to provide for our kids, even at the basic levels. And even if we go to the ideal, right, we don't have any indication that we are going to get that, but based on the history that we've shown you over the last decade. So I just wanted to say that.
I understand. I do understand. But if you look at your 2024 budget, I believe that number was in the 15 million for that other contractual service. That means that it's growing. It's grown by 1 million. That means that something's not changing somewhere. And also, you know, I get it. You had some contractual agreements that needed to come through. But we got to do better. This ain't right. I'm looking at the sheet on the other side. All I see is 0, 0, 0. So I don't really see a solid, dollar for dollar. I mean, we could talk offline, Chief Hernandez, but normally when I see budgets like this, I don't see them rounded up like that. So we need to talk offline, because right now I can't support this. I'm a property owner here, not only just a board member, but I don't know where you're going to get the extra 39 million. I don't know where you're going to get it. I mean, we sold properties, but that goes back to the city. For anything that the city gave us, we're in a hole. So, I mean, that's the reality here. So I don't know what to say at this point. I know that we got to get rid of the privatization. When you have it going straight across the board with the same amount, that means you're not going to get rid of it. So that's just, you're anticipating, you're forecasting, and that's what's happening here. The forecast numbers ain't changing, they're going straight across the board. So that just, I'm reading the room, basically. And this ain't it for me. So that's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. A couple of questions that I have or comments. I will remind people there is in the public that there is on the regular monthly budget sheets, there is a little more breakdown in terms of what the broad categories are. So maybe I recommend consider adding that as maybe as an appendix to the current presentation, just that breaks it down. So for instance, I know looking at the one for December, in the other contractual services, that's also where legal services are, postage, some special education costs, et cetera. So maybe something that breaks that down. I know under maintenance, it's building maintenance, rental, light bulbs, uniforms. So maybe as an appendix, having like a definition there for some of these broad categories that don't make, that we have constant questions about, and rightfully so, as to what is a part of these. And I know you can only have so much detail at one level, but having it there as an appendix or something might also provide those definitions. One of the questions that I have is just in terms of, when I see this a lot, the difference between the it was 252 and the 230 number is, I see a lot of opportunity costs. And I'm wondering what are some of the things that we could do if we could actually use grants for extra activities, extra learning things, as opposed to just paying for staff off of them to try to make up for the shortfall in funding from the state.
Yeah, again, that will be a question that I'll defer to the academic team to speak to what other uh, initiatives, or improvements we can make with that additional funding. So, Dr. Negron?
At the very least, it would mean that we can go back to our equity formula and our staffing guidelines that were approved by the district a few years ago to ensure that we are having the number of staffing that we know is recommended by different entities. Because right now, when we look at the number of school counselors that we have, social workers, we are at a minimum, right? We have not fully implemented the staffing guidelines. That's at the very, very least in terms of where the money could go.
So I think it's just important, and maybe in an appendix or something, or maybe provide a link in a future presentation to, what the opportunity cost is really costing us. And so if you don't think we have enough math teachers, language teachers, security officers, custodial, et cetera, in the buildings, the staffing guidelines, and I think 32 or more categories have the listing of what we wish we could do if we only had the funds. So I think that's something that kind of provides a little bit of what's meant behind those numbers. I think that's important. I also think it's important for just all of us to remind ourselves here what we had to do to try to even fit into this budget allocation that we had, which we were, freezing positions. We had an abrupt building closure. We had possible layoffs, cuts across the categories where we can't afford to have cuts, building maintenance, et cetera, is just somewhere of those places that we pay for that. And I think that did a little calculation during the presentation. If we only had the per pupil funding that Hartford had for their school district, there would be an extra $32 million in the budget to be able to do this. And so if people are saying, well, where's that? And I say, I don't know where that is, but Hartford seems to have been able to figure it out. And I'm assuming with some extra help from the state. I don't know that for a fact. Maybe Hartford has I think a higher mill rate. So maybe there's a higher city contribution, which my understanding has gone down as a percentage of the overall city budget, which is information I've learned through some of the activities of our teachers union and other unions that have been fighting for extra school funding. So I think some of those things, just the comparative information in a future presentation of this budget, I think is really needed because we don't just exist in a vacuum. We are in a very wealthy state, and per pupil funding is everything. That's, the numbers are big because we have one of the largest districts in the state, the number one or number two, depending on the exact numbers where they break out year to year. So that's by definition, the numbers are going to have to be large. I do worry about the increasing other contractual costs and so on, but I also understand that, my contractual costs are going up too, in terms of getting my car fixed and my insurance costs for my house and a variety of other things. Nothing ever seems to go down, which is just some of the other reality that we're dealing with. So I think those are just some of my comments there. The need of some comparative information at some point in this process. And then my one question is, my understanding is the intention is to have a budget book or a more full view of what the overall total budget is. And I'm just wondering, are we still on track to have that available in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I encourage, everyone to, if you have the time, to partake on one of our upcoming community budget development forums. The presentation there, it speaks to the budget for next year, but it also It speaks more in detail of what those categories, what's included on those categories, which is, Mr. Chair, what you just asked. There are two slides that speak only about the detailed within each of those categories. As we were trying to educate our community, our other stakeholders, our parents, that we made two slides just dedicated to that. So I encourage, everyone to at least partake on one of those upcoming community forums because it's very informative and it expands beyond what I presented today, and it's very, very it also shows some of the specific school budgets, which on the budget book format. So there you will get a good glance of how the budget book will look like. And I didn't bring that to this presentation because those are for specific schools as opposed to the whole district. But we already have many of those already ready to go. But again, we're still in draft mode. So that will come, at some point, in the future, it will be put together when we have a more final numbers to start presenting.
Well, I'm two suggestions related to that is one is if these aren't listed on the website already as to when the ones in the coming days are going to be, that would be good so that people know when they're going to be occurring. And then the second thing I might suggest doing is having one of those presentations listed as information item for the board in Friday's meeting posting, just so, as an example of just what you're talking about, which has some of that extra detail on the school basis so that we can kind of get a sense of where all that is going in the coming weeks.
Yeah. So very, very quick, just for information, we have one on Wednesday at 6 o'clock at Wilbur Cross High. So the next one will be at Wilbur Cross at 6 p.m. On this Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we have the last two, which is in the morning. We have one at 9 a.m. at Truman School. And then the other one at 4:30 p.m. at Nathan Hale. So we have one on Wednesday and then two on Thursday. One in the morning, one in the evening.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Downer?
You're muted. You're on mute.
So I, I just thank you. I just want to know, has enrollment increased? So enrollment hasn't increased, but the budgets are increasing.
And I think, Ms. Downer, that's a great statement to make because we often hear that, right? One would assume that if enrollment is going down, that your cost is going to go down, but not necessarily so, right? Because take, for example, let's say that, 1 year you have 50 kids in a kindergarten class, and the next year you have, let's say, 46 kids in a kindergarten class. You're still going to need to have the same number of classrooms, the same number of staffing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that when enrollment goes down, your cost is going to go down.
So what has, I'm just going to ask this question. What has differed from your 2023 year, your line item, to your 2025 year, 2025, 2026 year? Has anything differed? And this was before Chief Hernandez. I'm talking the previous former chief. Has any other line item has changed since then?
By change, can you explain a little more?
So for instance, I'm looking, if I look back at the 2023, 2024, and I'm looking for things that have added from, like, have we had any extra expenses that we didn't incur 2023, 2024 to warrant this type of increase that you're asking for? That's what I'm looking for. I know we have grants coming in for the buses, but I just wanted to know if it was a difference that I'm seeing that I should be seeing. I'm just trying to compare the two.
So I mean, I'll just give you a few, but these are the kind of like top of mind right now. I mean, salaries, for one, that's the biggest one and the easiest one to explain. Salaries, as you know, 4.3% of teachers, that's about $7 million just between 1 year and the other. So just remember that number, right? Between this year that we're now compared to next year, that's $7 million. That's a lot. That's $7 million just for the full-time teachers based on a 4.3% wage increase. And that's for salaries, and that goes across all the other categories, not just teachers, but all the other categories. So
Understood.
that in itself, it's a huge chunk of it.
So 7 million is a huge chunk, but do you realize that you're asking from 213 to 252? That's not just 7 million. So something has to have had changed.
Okay, so there's for me to explain this, I will need a little bit more time, right? Because the 213 is the approved budget. What we asked for last year was 231. So if you want to compare what changed between last year and this year, you have to use 231, which was our request, to compare to our request this year. And like I said before, the change is only $1 million. So when you compare 213 to 232, that is not apples to apples. You are not comparing two of the same levels of budgeting.
Okay,
Um,
got it. So I'm just trying to brace myself for the 252.
so the 252, it's before we implement some of the special funds. So I'll tell you what has been done in the district, historically. What the district has done historically is that oftentimes towards the end of the year, we make some realignments on funding, and we find out where we have some special funds that are in alignment with some of the costs that we have already incurred or that we're going to incur in the last few months of the year. And then they do that realignment. What I asked the team this year was to avoid doing that and to be very proactive and start the budget process with already identifying how we can maximize our funding. Because if we don't, we're going to have a much bigger budget deficit to begin the year. So instead of 252 compared to 213, I'm saying 232 compared to 213, right? I'm already bridging that deficit, that gap, by proactively identifying other funding sources that we could use to cover our expenses, as opposed to waiting towards the end of the year, which is, to me, it's not a fiscally responsible way of managing our funding, because there's no guarantees that at the end of the year I'm going to have those funding available for me to cover the deficit. So what I'm doing is saying ahead of time, even the year before the year begins, I'm identifying what funding we can use to bridge that gap of funding. And that's the most responsible way of doing before the year starts. I'm saying, hey, these are the things that we could do. This is how we can maximize our funding. After that, what is our deficit even after we do that? And then start the conversation on how we can bridge the last portion of that deficit, as opposed to wait until the end of the year and then catch the board by surprise. Hey, by the way, we have a $20 million deficit. I don't want to catch the board or the public by surprise. I want to be ahead of the game and then start maximizing our funding from the beginning of the year.
So I would, if I'm on the board, I would strongly advise you to have done something different, because I won't be in surprise. And when it comes to public funds and fiscal responsibility, I would think to be as detailed as possible at all levels. So down to the penny. And this is where we're headed. We can no longer keep doing the same thing that we've been doing and expecting different results. At some point, they're going to turn off the floodgates. And the city is not going to bail us out anymore. We got to do something different. We got to do something different. And I'm done with it. Mr. Wilcox said a lot. We don't get the per pupil funding that we should get.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a great deal of funds where our state folks thinks that we can do a lot more better with the funding that we do have now, and that I agree with. I do agree with that.
But Ms. Diner, if I may.
No. One second, Dr. Negron. 1 second. And when I say that, with any business or organization, they have income balance statements. They have balance sheets. They mean things. And they're not rounded up the way I've seen these sheets. I personally do a profit and loss for my home. And I know I don't round it. It's to the penny. Because that's the only way you tell that true story. So I get it. But I know we got to do things different. And we're not doing things different. We're just adding $1 million here, adding $1 million here. And eventually it's going to bite us. And I thought we are going to do something different, but I've been talking for a long time for these 2 years, and I see we're not. So that's my take on it. I'll give you the floor, Dr. Negron, but I'm standing on that. I won't be able to support this at all.
Thank you.
Dr. Negron?
I just wanted to add again that I think it's important also to realize, right, that when you just look at a decade, we are trying as a district to continue to provide for children and offer a learning experience when we're always operating with the negative. So I agree with you that we have to do something different. But if we already have taken a look to say, how many teachers do we need to meet the contractual numbers to ensure that we have the staff in front of our kids, and not only our classroom teachers, but to support in terms when it comes to their interventions, when it comes to their social emotional learning, when it comes to all the other pieces. If we're doing our due diligence to ensure that we have those things and we are not taking luxury of just adding without being cognizant of a reality, then we have to continue to say that, because what else are we going to do different? We still have to provide for almost 18,000 students. We have already closed buildings. We have merged. But I can't say that we're going to cut every line by a certain number. How else are we then going to be able to meet the obligation of providing a public education for our kids? That's the piece that I worry the most about. To go back to Dr. Yarborough's original question, what else are we going to cut? Do I agree with you that, yeah, like who has $39.4 million extra to give? I believe that the city doesn't have 39.4 million to say, sure, Board of Ed, let's give you $39.4 million. Even though I do believe that they believe in supporting all children, I doubt that they have 39.4 million to give. But I do disagree when the state says you have what you need. I completely disagree. We don't have what we need. We continue the conversations to show that we don't have what we need, and we are always operating in the red. That is not a way to run a district.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Just as my final thoughts on this, I do think that it's one thing to remember that some of the things that we started out with, which is that the state CCS formula hasn't changed since the beginning. It just now is getting up to where they're actually funding the low level. We've had opportunities last year, the state, to rethink that, which would have brought tens of millions of dollars in through some of the legislation that was on the table. But people saw fit to make sure that that didn't come up for a vote. But I understand these are incredible, challenging times, and I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, that if we have a hamburger budget and people complain about the steak dinner, is the challenges are hamburger prices are going up along with everything else. And so, including the labor costs for the labor contracts, which we've approved, because people need to pay for the rising prices, and just like we're stuck with here. So I'm glad that the plans are there in place to have the detailed budgets, the full budget book available in the coming weeks to accompany these. So it's not going to be after the fact, it's going to be with the budget proposal. So people will be able to see across the board to the penny all the costs in all the categories and all the departments. And I think that that is going to be a really necessary thing, because I will agree with my colleague, the public wants to see this information, and I'm glad the district wants to produce it and is working on it, and it's going to be there to answer some of these questions about exactly what are we talking about when we're talking about this category or that category, or what's going into this school or that school. So, Ms. Downer, and then Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, and I was wondering if they could literally break down these general categories. Like they got general supplies, 1.2 million. What makes up a general supply? And just put little bullets of what makes it up. Like we got money sitting over here in all schools for almost 400K each year. I think I don't know if that's salaries, but then you have God, you have the curriculum, I guess the drama, the band is $10,600. Instruments cost a lot. So there isn't a lot of money applied there. But then you have music over here for 100K. So I don't know what that entails. Is that instruction? Or, I mean, maybe we could have it totally broken down to what's in there, what's built in there. And that would be so helpful for me to understand what's actually happening here, and it's just a lot. How about that? The other thing that was like the testing material, which was 28.5, is that the state testing material that has to come out of here? We got equipment sitting here, but then we got equipment at 308K. So that's something we're gonna, I would think that computers would be equipment also because it's a tool, but I don't know. I just think that this is just too general, way too general to know what's broken down in this stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's the way the school does it, but it should be different. It really should be different. You need to break it down what's in here. And that's it.
Thank you. Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, two thoughts I wanted to share that have come to mind. One is that our state has money. It has a very healthy surplus, and it is able to provide for the education of our children. So when I look at the budget, I agree about extracting it from the city. Hard and impossible to a large extent, and that our state has resources that they can allocate at least equitably. The second piece is I realize also when I look at this budget or when we look at the budget for next year that there's part of it that is more precise and part of it that is an estimate. The more precise of the cost, let's say from the salary negotiations from staff, where we know the number of staff positions we have, we know what the cost is, we know what the increase will be over a period of years, and that is a number where we can be more precise in projecting for next year. But something like utility costs, without knowing the rate for electricity, that will be hard to project without knowing some of our other contractual costs or other things where we have to put things out to bid. Right now, we're providing estimates for those and thinking what's going to stay the same, what's going to increase, what's going to decrease. So I just want to acknowledge that I do recognize in looking at this budget projection for 2027 that there's some numbers that are more precise and there are other numbers where we are thinking about inflation, thinking about what the cost may be, and we're taking an educated and strategic estimate for what those costs are. So that's something that I would expect in a budget, and we do see that here. That's all, Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. There's
Well, I must
nothing
say,
else.
I'm having a hard time, President Yarbrough, seeing what you're seeing. So
Yeah, we can talk about it because I also
someone
see
can
the points that you made.
enlighten me because I don't see what you see. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We could chat.
All right, if there's nothing else on this item, next item is an update on the landscaping contract plans. Dr. White?
Yes, we are in the process of rewriting how these go out to make sure we have the evaluation components of that. Those should be hitting the streets in the next 2 weeks so that we could plan for through July through next year. There is also going to be one mini grant going out because one of the vendors that was accepted for this past cycle became non-compliant or non-responsive to turn in materials for the city. So we could not proceed with the award for that. So that zone is being rebid to make sure that there is lawn cutting for the summertime, spring and summer, so that buildings look proper.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? President Yarborough?
Yes, just for the zone that became re-available, thank you for rebidding it and just going through that process. In my mind, it's an effort to continue to make the pricing competitive. So thank you for taking that extra time to do that work for us, for the district.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Hearing, seeing nothing else on this, snow removal update.
Okay, so obviously we had a huge storm this past week. It took a lot of work for us to get the schools ready, and we were able to only do 1 day of closure and delay the second day. We had all of our contractors out. They started out from Sunday during the storm, trying to as best to keep up. We've worked through the zones. They worked through the night, Monday into Tuesday, for us to open. They did have to go back to different areas. Just the biggest challenge is just the volume of this. And of course, the cost of this storm was much higher than things. So we will be coming back with change orders and have to increase the amount for this to take us through the rest of this season. Additionally, we've been providing feedback to the contractors, and when something wasn't right, we called them back. The biggest challenges were really trying to keep up with spaces after they were plowed by the city, because sometimes things were plowed back in. Also, making, for lack of a better word, holes, walkways back off the block. That was probably the biggest thing. Some of our schools, between where snow was piled, you ended up with nowhere for students to come onto the block. So building managers had to work on that, contractors had to work on that, and we've had to go back and forth, obviously, as they've been, some of these areas have been reshuffled in and continuing to push forward. And anything that needed to be done, we did call contractors back out to any deficiencies we saw. Like I said, the biggest one being the crossing onto streets. We've tried to lower snow piles wherever possible, but it's, as we all see across the city, this was a very difficult one to work with.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I know it was a big one. It took me a lot longer than you all to dig out just from my house. I live on a state road, and stuff getting plowed onto the right where you don't need it and right where you've already cleaned it is, yeah, that's no fun.
Yes, by the time I cleaned my area, went out to look at schools, I had to shovel back out to get into my driveway again.
Yeah, but the reality is there. Dr. Yarborough, you had your hand up too?
Yes, thank you. I'm hoping we do not get more snow. If we do, physically, where is it going to be put? What would the instruction be to the crews? Or does the city have a strategy?
Unfortunately, it's really piling wherever we can. One of the things that ends up happening, some of the staff's parking spaces have to be taken up. It's also a challenge with parking bans. Getting our citizens back out of the parking lots were a challenge, but also some of our citizens also came through and helped us out a whole lot. We had a bus stuck at Hills, unable to make the turn at Hills Central because of the way it was plowed. All of the neighbors came out and dug out the way so that the bus could make the turn. So we let the cars stay there a little. The ones left there, gave them a little extra grace on getting their cars out. But realistically, it's putting it wherever we can within. The city has been moving through with payloaders and moving it about. So really, it's one, stay within the regulations for the city, not to shovel onto other people's property. There are a few places where plowing out ended up on other people's property. We fixed that. We don't plow out into the street. Again, city ordinance, those are things we have to work with. So it's staying everything we can do within the city ordinances to complete the work.
All right,
Thank you.
Ms. Downer?
Yes, I just wanted to Dr. White, thank you for doing such a good job. I believe we're supposed to get snow this week. The temperatures are gonna drop. But
should be just a dusting.
So the other thing is this: does these vendors know that they can't block handicap? I've been getting a lot of complaints.
Those were things we were. Those are things that were ramps. Right. We go back and tell them that. Of course, they have their teams out there that should know all that, but it's talking with the direct owners about making sure. And anytime there's been an issue, they've sent their people back out to clear those.
Okay, so I, like I said, the ones I did call in one and it got addressed, but then I went back and checked and they did clean it up. But right. They need to probably know where those ramps are. Maybe if you provide a map to them that these are where the ramps are, that particularly will get taken care of the way it's supposed to get taken care of.
And that's one of the things that we'll be going into, as I've mentioned, as we do, we're telling people now, but also as we go into the RFP process for next year, our schools will be submitting what spaces they use for arrival and dismissal, because while it may look obvious, this is the front door of the building, they might be using a side entrance, which still needs to be clean, but making sure that we're getting all of the areas done properly, making sure, and you're right, maps so that they know, like, for example, Davis has a ramp that's hard to be seen, and that they had to come back to get that done.
Right, so it's not just Davis, it was John C. Daniels, Edgewood, Nathan Hill. Those are the schools that I got the alert for. But again, they were done, but I just think that they just need to know where these ramps are.
I would totally agree with that. And again, the more familiar, ideally when people are familiar with the space, also it's a lot easier for them. So we're going to encourage, as they bid out on zones, to take a tour of it so they know exactly what they'll be doing.
And also the emergency evacuation routes too. So if those doors lead out to that, those need to be done.
Yes.
We got kids coming at all four angles of the school. We need
to
make sure we're hitting those codes.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Looking at the agenda, unless there is any upcoming financial issues that we haven't already talked about, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We shall vote. Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.